Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the meeting of Friday, the 19th of May 2023 of the Nithsdale Divisional Licensing Board. I'll do the housekeeping first. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when you are not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write "speak" in the Teams chat function or raise your virtual hand, and you will be invited to speak in order. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently as possible. Item 1, Sedent apologies, and I would like to approve members' remote participation. So, Caroline, would you like us to take us through the sediment and apologies, please?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. We have apologies this afternoon from Councillor Little. I can see all other 5 members present on the screen, but if I may, Convener, I'd just like to go through just to ensure that that we are indeed quorum and we have all 5 other members. So I'd be grateful, Councillor Beretti, if you can confirm your attendance and that you can hear me okay.
Yes, Caroline, I'm here and I can hear you perfectly clear.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dorward?
Hi, Caroline.
Hi there, afternoon, Councillor Dorward. I can see yourself, Convener, and Councillor Jordan?
Yes, hi, Caroline. I'm fine.
Afternoon. So, Convener, we're quorum with 5 members out of 6, and as I've said, apologies, Councillor Little.
Right, move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Don't see any hands going up. We'll move on to the body of the work now. Items 3 and 4 are the 2 that we have. Caroline, would you like to take us through the agenda now?
Yes, thank you, Convener. You have a request, the item number 4, in relation to the White Hart Dumfries review of the extension of the terminal hour from 2 AM Friday and Saturday into Sundays taken prior to item number 3. So effectively there is a switch. So I just wondered your thoughts there, Convener, in taking that item prior to item number 3 and switching them both around.
Well, looking at the information in front of us, it would suggest that we could possibly do that, but you never know if something crops up. But I would be happy to accommodate that request. Are other members willing to bring item 4 forward, and that would let the people away, and then we can concentrate on item 3?
Agreed.
No dissent. Right, Caroline, if we take item 4, which is Licensing Act 2005, White Hart Dumfries, review of the extension of 2 to 3 AM, Friday and Saturday, trial period. Caroline? Thank
you, Convener. I believe we have an agent, Mr. Stephen McGowan, present with us this afternoon. Mr. McGowan, can you just confirm that you can hear me clearly okay?
Yes. Good afternoon, Convener, Your Honours, and good afternoon, Caroline. Nice to see you. I'm here, and Susan McMillan, the operator, is also out there in the ether somewhere, and I'll be happy to make submissions when appropriate, Caroline.
Thank you. So I'll just go through the report, Convener. This is an application for a major variation. The premises are the White Hart Hotel and Brewery Street, Dumfries. The premises licence holder who's with you today is Susan McMillan. Now, a wee bit of a history here in relation to the reasons for the report. You've been asked to consider whether a variation to extend the terminal hour from 2 in the morning to 3 in the morning on a Friday and Saturday. That's effectively the Friday night into Saturday morning to 3 AM, the Saturday night into the Sunday morning 3 AM. It was granted for a 6-month trial period at a hearing back in 9th of September 2020. And before yourselves today's consideration as to whether it should be granted on a permanent basis or not. Just going back into that wee bit of a background, the hearing back in 9th September in 2020. You agreed to grant that variation, as I've just said, for that 6-month trial period, pending submission of an updated report from both Police Scotland and the Licensing Standards Officer with regard to the impact that the operation of that extra hour on those 2 evenings may have on the licensing objectives. The rest of the major variation was granted in its entirety. The matter called again before you at a hearing on 9th of March 2021. Both updated Police Scotland LSO reports before the board stated that the premises had been unable to utilise that extra hours trading on those 2 evenings due to, you'll recall, all the coronavirus restrictions at that time. Too many, that it changed so much and so quickly. It was so fluid, I can't even recall. So they were unable to use that extra terminal hour on those 2 evenings during that period. So at that hearing in March 2020, after hearing from all the parties, you agreed to extend the terminal hour from 2 AM to 3 AM on a Friday onto Saturday morning and a Saturday into the Sunday for a 6-month trial basis. And the commencement date of that 6-month trial period was delegated to myself for determination in conjunction with Police Scotland and Mr McGowan. So there has been a wee bit of a gap here because of coronavirus, and the trial period was subsequently agreed amongst myself and the agent, Mr McGowan, and running past Police Scotland to commence from the 25th of November 2022 to the 25th of May 2023. So it's now calling before yourselves, members, with updated reports. So at Appendix 1, you have the Police Scotland updated report, and at Appendix 2, you've got the updated LSO report. So in terms of suggested procedure, convener, you may wish to hear from Police Scotland to speak to their updated report with any questions from yourselves, if any. Thereafter, hear from the LSO to speak to their updated report with any questions from yourselves, if any, and then allow Mr McGowan to speak on behalf of his clients, followed by any questions from yourselves, if any, and thereafter allow Mr McGowan the opportunity to sum up on behalf of his client their position prior to going into session. Thank you.
Right, I think it's Sergeant Armstrong we have with us again today. Good afternoon, Sergeant. Have you anything you would like to add to your report, or anything you want to highlight out of your report?
Good afternoon, convener. Sorry. Yes, just obviously we have initially objected to this extension. We appreciate there's obviously been a trial period as well. Just from our point of view, there's been 14 licence premises inspections, and obviously in relation to the premises, so the premises has been monitored. In terms of 2 incidents which have occurred between the extended hours between 0200 and 0300 hours in the morning, there was 2. One of them was we received a call from the White Hart Hotel to inform us of a male person who'd been causing a disturbance outside the premises by shouting and swearing. We've attended and traced both staff members and this male with no complaints forthcoming. The male was spoken to by police and advised not to return to the premises. The second one, once again, it was on Saturday, the 24th of December. We received a call from the White Hart Hotel requesting assistance due to an ongoing fight at the premises door involving 2 males. Police attended and traced the male person who was being restrained by door stewards. Witnesses stated the male had attempted to assault a member of the staff. The male was arrested, charged with assault. There has been further proactive inspections done by police and LSOs in conjunction with each other to make sure that basically all the licensing and conditions are being upheld, which we can confirm that it has been. And although those 2 incidents have occurred, I need to once again highlight that again it has been a good cooperation between the actual premises and police, which has allowed the early reporting of offences for the police to come and deal with those in terms of a positive manner. I was asked at the previous meeting a comparison in relation to the 6 months previous in relation to another premises. I think I'll head that off before I get asked that question. So I have done a review of the 6 months prior to the extension trial period being granted, and there was no incidents reported at that premises. Thank you.
Any questions for Sergeant Armstrong? Don't see any hands going up. Now, can't see your name in the list, but is Miss Connolly here, the Licensed Standards Officer? Yes, here we are. Right, Emma.
Yep. Good afternoon, convener. As per my report, no adverse comments to add.
Any questions for Emma? No hands going up. Mr. McGowan, would you like to address the committee?
Thank you, Convener, Councillor Hislop. Your Honours, could I say first of all, just thanks for the agreement in having this application heard first. That's appreciated. In terms of my submissions for the application, Caroline's overview there, I think, has saved me a bit of a job in terms of giving you the history. I feel like today's been a long time coming, Your Honours, because it was so long ago now that we all looked at this. You know, it was a while ago, and obviously we had to experience the COVID interregnum. So I think it has been a long time coming, just under 3 years possibly, I think, in fact, to get to this stage. So we are finally here today, and I'm very pleased to be able to say to the board that the trial that Your Honours were willing to grant Susan has gone very well, and hopefully you can see that in the letters both from the police and from licensing standards, neither of whom are objecting to the trial becoming a permanent fixture. I'm sure one of the things that I said to Your Honours when we examined this before was that the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and I think it's been a success, and I think it's a shared success. It's a success for the board, that I would respectfully suggest, as well as the police licensing standards, and of course my client, in operating the trial and it being a success. And I'm hoping therefore that Your Honours would be with us to allow the matter to proceed on a permanent basis, having given us the benefit of the trial. I'll just briefly comment, Your Honours, on the two incidents which are mentioned. The first incident actually relates to an assault which happened at another licensed premises, and the victim came to us to seek our assistance, and Susan and her staff phoned the police. So although the police attended at the White Hart, the actual incident was nothing to do with us, and it actually occurred somewhere else. The second incident was a case of a customer who had been in the premises and had begun to act aggressively, and he was asked to leave as a result of those behaviours, and wasn't very happy about having to leave, and ultimately Susan and her staff phoned the police for assistance, and you've also heard from the sergeant about that. Absolutely the right thing to do, Your Honours. You know, these two incidents have occurred, but I think actually they show that Susan and her staff run the premises in the correct way. Incidents always happen in licensed premises, Your Honours know that. You know, Your Honours know that well. And I think the key thing for me is not that an incident occurs, but it's how the premises deals with the incident. And hopefully you can see from the police letter that they're very happy with the cooperation that they've received from the staff when they've attended and dealt with these matters. So that's just a couple of points in relation to those incidents, because they've been narrated. But overall, Your Honours, what I'd like to say and what Susan would like to say is that if you are with us in making this a more permanent arrangement, then she and the White Hart will continue to operate in the same way. They will continue to observe the conditions that were part of the trial, which you'll note in the LSO's report and Emma's report. So we will obviously continue to observe all of those conditions, the drugs policy, having a personal licence holder present, etc. And I also just want to say that the trial and the presence of the 3am is really important to Susan. The commercial viability of the premises is an extremely relevant factor for her, as I'm sure you appreciate. So having it and having it retained is very important for the White Hart going forward. So today's a big day for Susan. You know, it's taken us a long time to get to this stage, but we're very hopeful that you'll be happy with how it's going, and that you'd be with us in granting the arrangement to be made on a permanent basis. So thanks very much for letting us have the trial. Thank you for listening to me today, and I'll answer any questions that you have for me.
Over to members. Are there any questions for Mr. McGowan? I don't see any hands going up. Just give a wee bit, just in case it takes a wee while to find buttons in these things. No, seems fine. Sum up, Mr. McGowan.
I think you've heard everything you need from me, Your Honour, so I won't take up any more of your time. I hope you'll be with me, and thank you.
Well, I think my view on it is that if you run a bar well, people come to it. And I think it's been shown that during this time, the bar has been run well and the police have been, maybe they're ideating what's going on, turned round from being opposed to this to actually in support. So I would be happy to grant the extension to 3 o'clock on the 2 days for a permanent basis. Councillor Beretti?
Yeah, thank you, convener. I think in light of what was just said about that first incident, that it wasn't originated at the premises, which means it's only effectively one incident in 6 months. We'd say that they run a good tight business. I would happy to support your commendation.
Councillor Jordan?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'm in agreement. It's heartwarming to see that they're taking a proactive approach and working well with the police. So I would also be willing to agree to granting that on a permanent basis.
And Councillor Campbell?
Thanks, convener. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I think they're quite responsible in the way that they deal with these incidents, and both incidents happen to be in December. There's been none since then, so I have no issue in granting this application on a permanent basis. Thanks, convener.
And Councillor Dorward?
Convener, thank you for that. No issues at all with what I've heard in granting the extension of the licence. Thanks.
Right, Caroline, I think that, Caroline, want to come in?
Thank you, convener. I'm going to appear at the, I'm here. I just wanted to, just for clarity, if you're minded to grant, you've heard from the agent advising that his client is willing to adhere to the 3 conditions that you had attached at your previous hearings in relation to this, one of which was there was a drugs policy refusal register, and also the personal licence holder must be present on the premises until 3 AM. And just for clarity, if you're minded to grant on that, can you just clarify that it is, you would want those 3 conditions still attaching to the licence? Mr. McGowan has said that his client is still willing to adhere to those.
Yes, I took it that was something that for after normal hours or sort of thing, any extensions, that's what was just a formality that you would accept those. So yes, I would like those included, because I think it shows that you're taking a step up in your view towards running your facility. So I think that's quite a good thing. So Caroline, if you'd just like to confirm the decision of the board.
Thank you, convener. So just running by yourself, convener, that the board's agreed to grant this major variation for extension of the terminal hour on those 2 evenings, 2 AM to 3 AM, subject to the 3 conditions that were agreed not only at previous hearings, but also Mr. McGowan has advised today. Yeah, okay, so Mr. McGowan, you've just heard from the board and this major variation application. The extension of the terminal hour from 2 AM to 3 AM on both evenings, Friday into Saturday, Saturday into Sunday morning, 2 AM to 3 AM has been granted with the 3 conditions attaching to the licence in relation to the drugs policy, the refusals register, and the personal licence holder must be present on the premises on those evenings until 3 AM. And you'll be notified of that decision in writing in early course with the amended licence with yourself in early course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, convener and your honours. Susan will be delighted with that, I'm sure. I'd also just like to say that, of course, that we're also grateful to the police and licensing standards for their continued cooperation, and that continued cooperation will, of course, persist. So thank you once again, and I'll leave you to the rest of your hearing. All the best.
Thanks for that. We'll now move on to item 3, which is Licensing Scotland Act 2005, Premises Licence Review, the Riverside Bar, Dock Park, Dumfries. Caroline, you want to take us through the report?
Thank you, convener. I just want to ensure that we have a few individuals with us today and that they can indeed hear me clearly. The applicant for this premises licence review, Cara Samuels, is she with us today this afternoon? Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. And the agent, I can see we have Lynn Simpson from TLT. Can you hear me, Ms Simpson?
Yes, I can hear you.
And we also have Caroline Loudon from TLT. Ms Loudon, can you hear me also?
I can indeed. Many thanks.
Thank you. So, convener, this is an application for a premises licence review in respect of the Riverside Bar, Dock Park in Dumfries. The premises licence holder is Milan Svetkovic, and the applicant is Cara Samuels. The board received an application for a premises licence review from Ms Samuels via letter dated the 24th of March 2023. Said letter is detailed at Appendix 1 to this report. The convener has determined that the application should not be rejected. I can confirm in terms of legal procedure, notice of the hearing and a copy of the premises licence review application have been forwarded both to the licence holder and LSO, and notice of the hearing has also been given to Ms Samuels. The statutory LSO report that you're obliged to take into account is detailed at Appendix 2. Police Scotland have provided information in relation to alleged noise complaints at the premises, and that may be found at Appendix 3 to this report. The applicant, Ms Samuels, has also provided further information, and that's detailed at Appendix 4 to the report, and Environmental Health have also submitted a response detailed at Appendix 5 to the report. Now, as a preliminary point, convener, pursuant to the information that the applicant has submitted to the board, members will be aware that there's no statutory deadline in relation to the submission of documents in these proceedings. So you're being asked to consider whether or not you wish we shall call late evidence submitted by Ms Samuels, whether this should be submitted into proceedings or not. Ms Samuels, the applicant, was given an indicative date of the 9th of May 2023 to submit all relevant evidence and documents to support her application. I can confirm that on the 15th of May, being 4 days prior to today's hearing, Ms Samuels submitted to the board additional information and evidence in support of her application. Now, clearly submitting that documentation after the indicative date of the 9th of May, which is not a statutory timeline, it's an indicative date that we give to ensure that, in fairness to the licence holder, that they're given a good time to prepare their case today. So what you're being asked as a preliminary point, members, is in relation to this additional evidence and information that is not yet before yourselves, and it may not be before yourselves. I would suggest, convener, that the board ask the applicant, Ms Samuels, the reasons for submitting this late evidence. As I say, she's been asked to submit all evidence and information by the 9th of May. This has come in on the 15th of May. And of course, in terms of natural justice and fair procedure, you cannot have continual drip feeding of information, because in fairness to all parties to the hearing, the licence holder must have adequate time to prepare their case. Once you've received reasons from the applicant, Ms Samuels, as to why she wishes this late evidence to be submitted and why it was submitted after the 9th of May, being on the 15th of May, I would suggest you thereafter hear from the licence holders' agents, Ms Simpson and Ms Loudon, as to why the evidence should not be admitted, and thereafter have a discussion as to whether you're minded in terms of justice to admit this late evidence or not. So I would suggest, convener, at this stage, as a preliminary point, you hear from Ms Samuels the reasons why she has submitted this evidence late, 6 days after the 9th of May being the indicative date she was requested to submit all information. Thank you.
Ms Samuels, you'll have heard what Ms Traynor has said. I'd like to address the committee on the reasons why the information that you wish us to consider came in after the 9th at this point, but just on the reasons for the lateness of that submission rather than what is in the submission, because that we have to determine first whether we're going to accept that or not.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason for late submission was simply because the information that was provided took place on the 13th of May on a Saturday evening. And that's simply the reason for the lateness.
Right. Do any members have any questions about that, or is that quite clear as to the reason why it was late? No hands going up. Turn to the licence holders agents. I don't know who's addressing this one, whether it's Ms Simpson or Ms Loudon. We've been asked to entertain this late representation. What's your views on this?
Thank you, convener. We would simply object to this video being considered. I think Ms Samuels has had ample opportunities to submit evidence in advance of the indicative deadline, and I appreciate that the subject of the content may have taken place on the 13th, but that isn't a substantive reason for the additional information being submitted late, so we'd ask you not to consider that.
Right. Are there any questions from members for Ms Simpson? I don't see any hands going up. Over to members' decision now. Are members convinced that the evidence that has been submitted, or the reason for the evidence that has been submitted is late, is adequate to admit it, or would members rather just disregard that evidence? Don't see any hands going up. Oh, Councillor Barretti.
Well, I think that's the crux, convener. Is it material? And there's only one way to establish that, and that would be to look at the evidence and then make a decision.
Are the other members similarly minded? Don't see any other hands going up. Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, convener. I concur with Councillor Barretti's statement.
Right. Don't see anyone otherwise minded. So there is a feeling that we should be able to see this evidence. Ms Simpson, are you content that you have had sufficient time to actually...
Convener, sorry, may I beg your pardon, may I interject? Just convener, can you just clarify the reasons for admitting this evidence, because it's not yet clear to me. Can you just clarify the reasons, just for the record, for admitting this late evidence? Thank you.
I think,
and apologies for interrupting.
Right, based on what's been said, the reason was that the incident that it refers to happened after the date. I think that's where members were coming from.
Thank you.
And Ms Simpson, are you happy to proceed, or do you feel that you would need further time to actually consider this piece of evidence to fully represent to your client?
Convener, if I might come in at this point, I know it's going to be a bit chopping and changing. There isn't a reason for this. I think be helpful. I think we can agree it's a video that has come in from Miss Samuels, and it'd be helpful to have 5 minutes, presumably for your own time to have a review of that, and for us as well, just to have a discussion with our client as well. So if we could just have 5 minutes to review, that would probably be helpful from our point of view.
Right. I don't know which is the best way for you to do that. Do you go and speak to your clients offline, or?
Happy to do that. We can, I think, Caroline will advise, sorry, apologies.
We can adjourn for 5 minutes if that's all it takes, but Caroline?
Convener, so yeah, you've just been asked, are you happy to adjourn to allow Ms Loudon and Ms Simpson to concur with their client, view the content of the video, and then once they've concluded that, then you can come back. I don't know if there's any suggested timeline on that for Ms Loud and Ms Simpson, but give them adequate time to confer with their client and review the video, and then when they can come back, advise whether they wish to adjourn consideration of today's item to a future hearing date to enable them to better prepare and represent their clients. And I would suggest that you give them that opportunity. So it may be the case that they just want a brief adjournment to confer with their client and review the terms of the video.
So if we were to say 10 minutes, but if you're needing longer, you could come back and give us a wee heads up that you might be another 5 or 10.
Of course.
Just so that we're not delaying it too long on the day, but that should give you time to get in touch and what needs to be done. Plus, if you need to come back and just say, hang on another 5 or whatever.
Will do. Thank you.
Right. So we'll adjourn till, I've got 14:31 on my computer, so we'll give 10 minutes. So that'll be 14:41.
Forwards, Cheryl, our Senior Licensing Officer, if you could circulate that video evidence to members.
Been sent.
Thank you, and also myself as well. Thank you. And convener, you may just wish to take just adjourn slightly just to view that video, and then I can go through the procedure for today's proceedings. Thank you. Cheryl, can you just confirm in what method you're actually sending that video? Is it via Teams?
I've sent it via email, but I can share it on the screen if you wish. I can try. I'll share it on the screen if you wish, but I've sent it by email.
It might be better to share it on the screen, then we all see it at the same time rather than somebody getting it, and then it might be easier for time management.
Okay, Caroline, I have 3 parts to it. Then I have the email that was sent, the poster and the video. How do you wish me to share it? In 3 parts.
Caroline, that's one for you, I think. Advise the board, should this be seen?
We don't, as I understand it, Cheryl, we don't live stream, so there'd be no requirement for this to go live on YouTube, no.
Okay, so Caroline, how do you wish me to proceed sharing?
Cheryl, can you advise? My understanding is that the email and the video and the poster has been forwarded to Miss Loudon in its entirety. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Then what has been forwarded to Miss Loudon in its entirety will be placed before members now. If you could kindly circulate via Teams, I'd be grateful. Thank you. suggested procedure, convener. I suggest that you first of all allow the applicant, Ms Cara Samuels, to speak to her application with her supporting evidence, including the late evidence that you've agreed to submit today. Thereafter, any questions from members. Thereafter, I'd suggest that you hear from Police Scotland today to speak to what they have submitted detailed at Appendix 3 to the report, then questions from members, if any. Thereafter, allow the LSO to speak to her report detailed at Appendix 2, with any questions from members, if any. You also have comments submitted by Environmental Health, and we have Richard Proctor, Environmental Health Officer, here today. Allow him to speak to the terms of his comments and any questions from members. I beg your pardon. Paul, I beg your pardon, I've just missed something out. Can you just let me wind back there? It's been a long day. After allowing the applicant to speak to the application with her supporting evidence, including the evidence that has been submitted by yourselves today with questions from members, thereafter allowing the police to speak, the questions from yourselves, the LSO to speak, questions from yourselves, the Environmental Health, Richard Proctor, to speak with questions from yourselves, thereafter allow Ms Loudon and Ms Simpson to speak on behalf of the licence holder, and thereafter any questions from yourselves, and thereafter allow the applicant to sum up their position, and then allow the licence holders' agents to sum up their position on behalf of their client, and then I would suggest you go into session. Thank you.
All right, well, so based on that, we'll start with Miss Samuels, if you'd like to present your case for review.
Yes. So you have all of my evidence. Basically, the concern is about the noise on a Saturday night, and it's into Sundays as well, into the summer. As you can see from the video, the noise is exceptional, and I was advised to contact the licensing board because I had gone through the local council, Environmental Health, Police Scotland, and then it was recommended that I come to the licensing board. Essentially, the evidence is that it's far too loud. It's far too loud. It's having a negative impact on certainly my life and other residents, as you can see from the evidence provided by other residents around this.
Your Honours, Caroline, sorry, could I intervene here in that really the complainer should stick to the terms of the complaint, and we're kind of going a bit off script here, Caroline, sorry.
I was just actually going to say that in Ms Samuels, it's very important you can only speak to the terms of what you have submitted in your letter to the board and the supporting evidence. You can only speak to the terms of what you submitted. You cannot go off on a tangent and speak to matters that you've not raised before the board today.
Well, in that case, I think that all of my evidence is written down. I have nothing else to add. It's all there.
Right. If that's all you wish to say. The one question I would ask, the late evidence that was submitted. Now, in your email, it refers to a flat, but from the video, the video was taken outside rather than within the premises of a flat. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, thanks. Is there any other members with questions for Miss Samuels? I don't see any hands going up. Next on my list is Police, Sergeant Armstrong.
Thank you, convener. Thank you, everyone. Just in relation to the letter that we have obviously submitted as a division, obviously I can expand on that. We've got 7 noted incidents whereby Police Scotland were contacted in relation to noise complaints. I can read them to you. I can go through them. So the first one was on Saturday, the 4th of June, 22. at 21:04 hours, so 9:05 at night. So a member of the public contacted police and requested their attendance at the premises, reporting excessive noise from the premises, and it was an ongoing problem. The caller stated that the local authority licence team had attended on numerous occasions and spoken with staff. However, the noise appears to quieten down for a few weeks and then restarts again, and had been advised by the licensing board to contact police when it happens. Police have attended at 22:36 hours that night. A band was noted to be playing in the patio area with the doors open due to the warm weather. Staff were spoken to and advice was given. In terms of the second incident, which was Saturday the 16th of July 2022 at 22:34 hours, so 10:30 at night, a member of the public contacted police reporting they reside beside the premises and that a band was playing loud music from 7:45 that evening. They further stated that the licensing board had been consulted and their advice was to direct the complaints to police regarding the noise. Police were dispatched and arrived at 22:50 hours, 10 to 11 at night, where they reported there was no noise coming from the premises on their arrival, but please note the time difference. On Saturday the 10th of September 22 at 22:50 hours, once again, a member of the public from a neighbouring property contacted police regarding loud music from a live band playing at the premises since around 7:30 that evening. The caller stated the noise could be heard from within their home address, which had been recorded. They informed police that they had previously spoken with staff at the premises and also Dumfries and Galloway Council, but nothing appeared to change. Police resources were unable to attend due to other ongoing priority incidents. A member of staff from the area control room attempted to call the complainer with no reply, and a message was left to recontact police if the noise was still ongoing. So there was no physical police attendance at that incident. On Saturday, 26th of November 22 at 20:35 hours, so 25 to 9 at night, a member of the public contacted police stating they were a neighbour of the Riverside Bar requesting to make a complaint regarding noise, which was a live band playing coming from the premises. The caller stated that a live band plays every Saturday evening. They also stated that they had spoken with Dumfries and Galloway Council regarding the noise, where the council stated that the bar has a condition on the licence not to allow a live band to play within the conservatory of the premises. The caller checked at this time, and although the blinds were closed to the conservatory, they were of the opinion that a live band was playing within, and they would report back to the council. At that time, police were unable to attend immediately and attended nearly 11 o'clock that night and spoke with the manager and found the noise not to be excessive and the band was just finishing. On Saturday the 17th of December 22 at 20 to 9 at night, a member of the public contacted police stating they were a neighbour of the premises reporting excessive noise from a live band coming from the premises, and this was an ongoing issue. Police attended at 11:15 at night and found the noise not to be excessive from the live band. On Saturday the 4th of February 2023 at around about 9:10 at night, an anonymous call was received by Police Scotland reporting the premises had a live band playing within and the music was very loud. The caller stated that they lived only a few hundred yards away from the premises and was unable to hear the television in their own property due to the noise, which had been ongoing since 8 o'clock. The caller stated this was not the first time that this had happened, and they believed the premises had been given restrictions for noise from Environmental Health Department, but caller was not sure if this was still in place. At just after 10 o'clock that night, police attended and found no noise issues on their arrival. On Saturday the 18th of March 23 at 5 to 9 at night, a member of the public contacted police informing them that they were a neighbour of the property to again report the noise of a live band playing at the premises, which was very loud. They stated that the music could be heard over their television and that themselves and other neighbours had an ongoing dispute with the premises. It was requested for officers to attend for further investigation how loud the music was from the bar. Police attended at 10 to 10 that night. The music could be heard from outside the premises and was found not to be excessive. Just in terms of that, obviously we have attended noise complaints. The noise from the premises is obviously subjective, person to person, and the police do not have the facilities to measure the type of noise that comes from that premises. That's something that sits with environmental health.
One question, was the member of the public who contacted you on these occasions the same person, or was it varying people? Because there's reference to different people further on in different reports.
There has been different. It's not been the same person that's contacted us. There has been other people that have contacted the police.
Right. Thanks for that. Now, Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks, Sergeant, for the report. Some of the things that were said in the report was no noise issue or not excessive. How did you measure what's excessive? Was it through a machine, or was it just through your normal hearing?
Sorry, Councillor, just obviously at the end of the presentation of my letter, I just highlighted that this is police officers that are attending, which is completely subjective to noise. We do not have any form of noise measuring equipment. That sits firmly with environmental health, so it's up to the interpretation of officers. And I'll add the caveat that I was not one of those officers, so I can't speak to the noise myself. Obviously, I'm just going back on in relation to what's reported back to us.
Yeah, I mean, you can understand where I'm coming from. I mean, what might be excessive is some people might not be excessive to others. I mean, I'm at an age now where quite a lot of the disco music and stuff like that just drive me nuts because I'm just too old for that kind of stuff. However, thanks for your response. Thanks, Convener.
Is there any other questions from members? Don't see any. Over to LSO.
Thanks,
it's Julia Farrell today, right, Julia?
Good afternoon, everybody. I provided the LSO report, and I've included the background that we've had to these premises as part of that report. They're all detailed. I don't know if you want me to go through them one by one, but these relate to different complainers as well. It's not just to the review applicant. Members will note that the noise complaints date back to 2019. So in terms of what we can do as licensed and standards officers, we are limited because, like the police, we've not got the ability to monitor noise in any evidential basis. It's just a case of listening to it, and it's subjective. So what we do is try liaise with both parties, the complainer and the licence holder, to try and come to a resolution that might help. In this case, what's been tried with the licence and standards officer hasn't helped, and we got to the point where I had to advise Ms Samuels of her rights that she could ask for this review hearing, which is where we've ended up today. Happy to take any questions.
Members, any questions for Julia? Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, apologies for the delay, but I've just got to get my glasses back on. Yeah, Convener, I'm looking at page 13 of the report. I'm struggling. It says here, bands moved from marked position A to position B. Am I right in saying that is the hard structure directly behind the what do you call it? The not a gazebo. It's the conservatory.
Yeah. So the bands originally were situated in the conservatory, and as part of the agreement with the Environmental Health and Licence and Standards Officer, they were moved from position A and into the fabric of the building at position B to try and help with noise.
It's okay if I, Convener, can ask, in the past, because clearly I wasn't on the original licensing board that did this initially, was that brought into question as to have been a substantial abatement to the noise, or because clearly if you're doing it in B, which is hard walls and therefore noise absorbing, as opposed to the conservatory, which would have a different acoustic sound?
Yeah, well, this was agreed to try and help with the noise problem.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Convener.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Convener. Just a quick question regarding the curfew of 10:30 that had been introduced on the 30th of August 2022. I appreciate that was voluntary, but have you, Julia, spoken to the manager about that? Because I see that there are complaints about noise after that, and police have confirmed that they've attended and there has been band music going on. So what did that curfew mean? You know, I appreciate it was a voluntary one, but what did that include? What were the grounds of that curfew? And did you speak to the manager when you attended about that after that time?
So yeah, it was a previous colleague that had went with environmental health to speak to the premises manager, and this curfew of 10:30, I understand, was the cut-off for the bands. Obviously it was voluntary entirely. It's non-enforceable, as it wasn't attached as any condition to the licence. I did speak to Miss McGee, who did confirm that she was adhering to the conditions agreed, not conditions, to the agreements.
Do you want to come back, Emma?
Yeah, thank you. So just trying to understand. So the curfew was sort of, I appreciate, again, a voluntary one, but that the band would not play after 10:30. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding, yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Right. If there's no further questions for Julia, now move on to environmental health. Is Mr. Proctor here?
Afternoon.
Afternoon, Richard. If you'd like to speak to your report.
Okay, I'll try and give there's a bit of crossover between mine and the licensing, so I'll just try and give a brief summary. Originally, our department was contacted in June by Lower Burn Housing and an elected member regarding the noise. We undertook some monitoring early July, which we then decided not to use. It had been, the equipment we'd left in the house had been moved by the person complaining, so we felt it was better to redo the monitoring, and that was done at the start of August, the 6th of August, which I set up in the house and actually attended for a short period of time just to hear actually in person as well as through the equipment. And then we had some meetings with the premises, and as you've heard, we came to a sort of an agreement to move the bands into the main structure of the premises, away from the glass conservatory, and to try and reduce or restrict how long they would play for. And this seemed to keep our complainant happy. We've had a couple of complainants, mostly from the one block, and this original complainant was happy, although he has come back in November saying that he's bothered by noise again. We also had a complaint which was dealt with by one of my colleagues in September, and from discussion with the manager at the premises, we reckoned that was caused by the doors at the back of the premises being left open that night, and the noise was basically going out right up the corridor of the premises and out and affecting a different set of properties in the Nithsdale Mills. So that's really been our involvement at the premises.
Can you give us any insight onto the noise levels? There's reference that there's 55 to 60 decibels inside. Now, with regard to, is it background noise and stuff like that, and how high above background noise is that you would deem was normal noise, and then how much would you say it was exceeding that?
Okay, we probably wouldn't look at a background level in this type of noise monitoring, because you would do a background when you were outside the premises. So if you're monitoring at the front of the premises or a car park, you would maybe look at the difference in the background and the monitored noise. This was purely a noise level that was observed inside the house. It was to try and give some perspective as to how loud it would be for the residents in the house, and to try and make an assessment as to how they would affect them while they were living in their house. Would it be in the lounge, or if they were in their bedroom, how it would affect sleep or just sort of leisure time. 55 to 60 was roughly, there's obviously a bit of fluctuation, the music goes up and down slightly, voices go up and down slightly, so that was the sort of measured the time period that I sort of observed that it was in that sort of range. It fluctuated about. You could hear it in the house and you could hear it in the lounge. You would have to turn the TV up to hear over it. And if you didn't have the TV on, you could quite clearly hear it in the premises of the complainants, or the house of the complainants, the flat.
Got Miss Loudon wanting to comment on that.
I'm sorry to come in, Your Honours, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. And this is a difficult case, there's no doubt, because it's been taken by somebody who's written to you but now isn't going to make submissions to those letters. But in terms of what's being spoken to by Mr. Proctor, and again, I understand why you're doing that, you've been asked a question, what you're doing is talking about somebody else's house, somebody else's complaint, and it's not entirely relevant to this review application. It's been taken by one particular person. And I think it's really important that is made. I'm quite uncomfortable by the way that this is going, because we're talking about historic matters, which I understand have been introduced by the reports, but is not relevant to Cara Samuel's reason for calling us all here today. So I'll pass back to the clerk, but I'm uncomfortable with where this is going.
Ms. Traynor, would you like to advise us on that point?
Yeah, thank you, convener. I was just going to allow Mr. Proctor time to conclude what he was saying and just actually draw to your attention at the outset of his report at Appendix 5 that he is referring to the original complainant's flat, which is not relevant to today's hearing. The complainant, it's Miss Cara Samuels, that's brought this review hearing in relation to her premises, and I just wanted clarity to members that this report, when it's talking about noise equipment being installed in someone's flat, it's not the current complainer's flat, Miss Cara Samuels, and that's a very, very important differentiation here. So I think, convener, you may wish to give thought in relation to when you're asking Mr. Proctor questions as to what action, if any, have they taken in relation to the current complainer's home and these premises, as in have they installed any noise monitoring equipment in Miss Samuel's flat or the premises? Because it can be, I can appreciate there's a lot of material here before you, but the environmental health report, it could be a wee bit misleading talking about the original complainant's flat. Who is that individual? It's not Miss Cara Samuels. So the environmental health officer is talking about historical information in relation to a third party's flat that's not relevant to today's proceedings.
Right, thanks for that. So that might be something just to clarify, Mr. Proctor. Have you at any time been asked to put equipment into Miss Samuel's flat? And looking at this, would that be as a result of a change in noise, possibly from the relocation of the band? That's why you get different complaints. That's maybe speculation, I don't know.
I've not had equipment in Miss Samuel's flat.
Right, thanks for that. Councillor Barretti, I noticed your hand was up, but it's come down. Are you?
Yeah, convener. It was in relation to what had been said and clarity by. But then, from what she said, my question, I couldn't really ask it because it would not be relevant.
Right, yeah. With that, is there any other questions for Mr. Proctor? I don't see any hands going up. Caroline, I notice your hand's up. Is that a legacy one?
Beg your pardon, convener, it is indeed. Thank you. To bring it down now.
Right, yeah. If there's no other questions, move to the licensee now, or the representatives. Miss Loudon or Miss Simpson, whoever wishes to lead off in this.
Thank you, convener. I think before we get into the finer detail of the complaint, I thought some background information about the premises and where it is might be helpful. I think if you're not familiar with it, it sits close to the bank of the river Nith in Dumfries. It's fairly small, the maximum capacity of 125 persons. There's two small bar areas within it, a conservatory at the side, which there's been some discussion about, and also an outdoor terrace that looks out onto Dock Park, and then the river beyond that. And part of that you'll have seen when we looked at the video. During the week, it's a quiet venue. It's mostly used by residents who live in the vicinity, the majority of whom are 50 years plus. I'm told some of them are actually in their 90s. It is effectively a community pub, somewhere for the local residents to gather and socialise in a safe space. Many of these residents are in the bar most days and are on first name terms with Anne, the premises manager, who's also on the call today. Saturday evenings, which is the discussion that we're having, are really the only times when the premises offers something different, aimed towards a younger demographic. And when I say younger, I mean under 50s. There are often live bands playing in the bar on a Saturday night, as I've heard, and this has been a regular occurrence since 2015. Types of music vary, and it's a great opportunity for local bands to get out there and play some gigs. These nights are financially important for the bar. I think we're all aware of the impact the pandemic has had on these types of small premises in particular, and the income from these nights is vital. They're always well attended. It's always well received from people attending the event. There's always lots of people looking to go to these types of live music events. And without being able to run these, quite simply, the bar isn't financially viable. Your Honours have reports from Police Scotland, Environmental Health and Licensing Standards within your papers, and we've heard from all of those already. I'll go into those parts of those in more detail, but ultimately those reports paint a different picture of the situation to what's described in Ms Samuel's original letter and then her supplementary letter. There is nothing in any of those reports to actually corroborate the claims that noise coming from the premises is causing a public nuisance or indeed causing any harm to the public whatsoever. As I said, bands have been playing in the bar for many years now. There was obviously a break during the pandemic when the restrictions were in place. We've also heard that previously the bands would have played in the conservatory, and following discussions last year with Environmental Health and Licensing Standards, the bands were relocated to the other side of the premises. So they're now in the far corner of the lounge area, which is essentially as far away from the conservatory as possible. And Your Honour should have seen, you will have a plan within the Licensing Standards report that shows those two different points, where they were and where they've been moved from. That change was made after one of the residents who lives immediately adjacent to the premises had asked for steps to be taken to reduce the music levels on a Saturday night. I understand that resident lives much closer to the bar than the current complainer, Ms Samuels. That was the catalyst for the previous discussions and between Licensing Standards and Environmental Health. It was at that point that the agreement was made that the band would be moved, and the noise monitoring was carried out by Environmental Health. As my colleague Caroline's already highlighted, this was nothing to do with the current complainer. There have been no noise monitoring from her property. As part of those discussions last year, there was an informal agreement that the bands would look to finish at 10:30 instead of 11:30 as it had been in the past. Just to be clear, this wasn't a hard curfew. It was just something that the band, the premises undertook to do. Now, I think there were some occasions at the end of last year where the bands played probably closer to 11 p.m, but certainly not beyond that. And we've been assured by the premises manager that since then, the bands have finished at 10:30, and that a 10:30 cut-off would certainly be the plan going forward. As part of the information submitted late by Ms Samuels, there was a poster that had been shared on social media for a band playing earlier this month. That poster showed the times of the band as finishing at 10:45, but that was actually incorrect. It was essentially an out-of-date graphic. The band finished at 10:30, and when the graphic was shared on social media, there was actually a note at the top of that saying the band would finish at 10:30. So the graphic didn't actually correctly display what was happening. If we look at the letter from Miss Samuels in more detail, there are 4 specific dates that she mentioned. She called 101 because of the noise. So we've heard that 10th of September, 26th November, 17th December and 18th of March of this year. As we've already heard from Police Scotland, of all the times that they attended, they didn't find the noise to be excessive. Now, appreciate, and as we've heard, that is a subjective measure, but without any hard evidence, there is no evidence to prove that any noise coming from the premises was excessive or indeed a public nuisance. The premises manager had been under the impression that the mitigations made, so moving the band into the lounge area and moving the speakers, had been sufficient to address the previous noise complaints. And from what we can tell, there doesn't seem to have been really any further engagement with or by licensing standards or environmental health with the premises in relation to Miss Samuel's complaint. There's been no further noise monitoring carried out since the bands have been moved further into the premises. And I'm not aware that licensing standards have attended the premises since then either. And without those further investigations being carried out, it's disappointing that we find ourselves at this review hearing today. Despite the claims in Miss Samuel's letters that she's trying to engage with the premises manager assures us that isn't the case. They did receive an anonymous letter last year, but that was around the same time as the engagement with environmental health and before the mitigations were put in place. There were no contact details in that letter, so the premises manager couldn't follow up directly on that. And the fact that it was simply signed by a local neighbour suggested that they maybe didn't want to engage directly with the premises. There was claims in Miss Samuel's letter that her details had been shared by the premises manager and that customers from the bar went to find her flat. These claims are completely unfounded, and any suggestion in Miss Samuel's letters that these types of complaints can lead to intimidation or violence are quite simply ludicrous. Instead, we're in the position today where our client's been forced to incur considerable costs in defending this review application, as well, obviously, as the stress involved. And whilst the letters from Miss Samuels are detailed, there is no substantive or corroborating proof to support any of our claims. The fact that someone finds the noise far too loud just isn't sufficient. In terms of the video that was submitted late and that we've seen, there's no verification of when that video was taken. We appreciate that Miss Samuels has said it was taken on the 13th of May, but there's no way for anyone to corroborate that. As one of the board members has already queried, the person taking the video had positioned themselves in the park rather than at Miss Samuel's property. So again, there's no way to gauge how that correlates to any noise that may or may not be heard in Miss Samuel's property. We understand that her property is actually another 100 metres away from the premises, so there's no details of any geography or natural buffers that lie in between her property and the premises that may mitigate any of that noise. There's also a lot of other noise going on in the background of that video, not connected in any way to the premises. I think some of it you can actually hear from other activities in the park that are taking place behind the person taking the video. We have actually had letters of support from other neighbours. These were received late, so we didn't formally submit them. But those letters from other residents actually confirmed that generally they can't hear the music from within their own premises unless they have their windows open. And otherwise, when they're outside, they actually quite enjoyed having the music in the background. They didn't find it at all intrusive, and in many instances, it helped distract from some of the noise emanating from the park. In terms of the video, other than verification of the date and time of the video, which we can't do, there's also no verification of the validity of the video. today's technology, it's fairly easy to manipulate sound levels on videos without it being readily apparent, and there's no way for us to test that or check that. I would simply say that it's up to your honours to decide how much weight should be attributed to that video, given everything that I've raised. I've already mentioned that the police have attended the property and they concluded that the noise wasn't excessive in their subjective opinion. The noise monitoring carried out previously from the other property, things have changed since then and nothing further has been done. The ultimate purpose of today's hearing is to establish whether or not there are grounds to review the premises licence solely on the basis of the complaint letters received from Ms Samuels. I would submit to your honours that there are no such grounds for review. There's no suggestion that the licence holder is not fit and proper. There has been no breach of the premises licence. The premises is permitted to have live performances within licensed hours, and any agreements that were made in terms of when bands may finish or where they should be located were purely voluntary. These were not formal conditions of the licence. And there's also been no evidence of any breach of the licensing objectives. The only objective that would possibly be relevant is preventing public nuisance. But the noise levels don't constitute a public nuisance. If they did, environmental health would have taken further action, which they're not. And one single complainer also isn't sufficient to establish a public nuisance. What we have here is a potentially noise-sensitive person who's purchased a property near a licensed premises which offers live music some evenings, which presumably Ms Samuels was aware of when she purchased her property. If we look at the agent of change principle and acknowledge that's a planning principle, but the agent of change here is actually Ms Samuels. The premises were offering live music back in 2015 and have been ever since, other than the break during COVID, long before Ms Samuels moved into the area in 2021. And as your honours will be aware, if there are no grounds for review, no order can be made and no further action can be taken. I would submit to you that is the case here. There is no evidence. And on that basis, I would move your honours to dismiss the review application. Thank you.
Right. One sort of question. You said that the agent for change was Miss Samuels, but clearly she has started complaining once you've moved the band out of the conservatory and into the other part. So could that actually affect the way that the noise emanates out of the business, and that is why you have then received complaints from Miss Samuels?
I mean, there is no evidence of that if that were the case, it would be pure speculation, but logically that doesn't quite follow. The band's being moved from a conservatory further into the premises with hard walls rather than sort of conservatory walls, the windows. From what I understand, it's been moved further away from Miss Samuels' property, so there's nothing to demonstrate that moving the band inside would have made the music, any noise escaping, louder for Miss Samuels. And in terms of agent of change, it's not moving the band that is the important thing here. It's that the premises have been providing live music since 2015, long before Miss Samuels went to live in the area.
And can you tell me what qualifications you have in noise and the way sound waves travel through the air, just to clarify that isn't a possible reason that you're now getting complaints from different people?
I can't say yes or no. I'm not professing to have any qualifications whatsoever in that area. I was simply saying logically, in my opinion, that would be my interpretation of it. I would struggle to accept that moving the band internally had increased the noise. But as I say, I can't give any expert opinion on that. I don't have any qualifications in that.
Right, thanks for that. Do we have Any other members who would like to ask a question of the licensee's representatives? Councillor Barretti.
Thank you, Convener. I've been listening attentively. There's right at the end there, you said that these objections started coming in just within the last year and a half, 2 years. Prior to, from when you started in 2015, have you had any objections at all regarding the noise?
With respect, I don't think those are relevant for the terms of today's hearing. Today's hearing is solely in respect of Miss Samuel's complaint letter and the complaints from her, from the noise being heard from her property.
Okay, right. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Thanks for your report there. I'm looking at page 13 and there's a plan there, and clearly it shows you the conservatory. Where are the windows or doors that used to be opened on there in relation to Miss Samuel's flat? And where the lounge bar area where it says B in the bottom right hand corner, there's a window pretty close to that as well. So if you can let me know where those windows in both areas are in relation to Miss Samuel's flat.
I don't think we can answer that, Your Honour, because we don't know where Miss Samuels lives. That's never been provided to us in terms of a Google map or vicinity, and the video, as we've seen, is not taken from her property. So I think that's a question that is being asked, and unfortunately we can't help you with. Anne is here again. I don't think Anne knows where Cara Samuels lives either, but we can give you the direction of the window, and I can certainly let Anne speak to it to tell you there's a footpath marked there as to whether that's near the play park or not. But does that help? Should we?
Can I ask a follow-up on that from Councillor Campbell, just to clarify one part? If you don't know where she stays, how do you know you've moved the band further away from her?
Because we've taken it out of the family area and moved it back. And she, from what we've looked at on Google Maps ourselves, the mills are behind. So I think the position is...
So you do know where she stays, thank you.
We don't know where she stays, Convener, apologies. We don't, that's not been put to this licensing board. We don't have any address details. We've had a general look at the vicinity.
Then how can you tell from Google Maps where she stays that she's further away? You must have an idea. So I think you're contradicting yourself.
Caroline, can I ask you to step in, please?
Yeah. Members, first of all, if we could just have one person speak at a time, allow another person to answer that question. Ms Loudon has said that she does not know in relation to the outlay of the premises where Miss Samuel lives. And can I just also remind members that you can only consider matters that are before yourselves today in relation to the alleged noise nuisance that's impacting allegedly on Miss Samuel's, the applicant's, premises. Any other historical information or any other kind of allegations are not relevant here, or any other alleged complainants. It's only in relation to the material before you today, the actual review application that Miss Samuels has brought before you today with her supporting evidence. And it's very important, of course, that we allow one person to speak and not over the other. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
No, best just leave it there, Convener. Thank you.
All right. If there's no further questions, I don't see any hands going up. Right. Now we'll ask Miss Samuels if you'd like to sum up your case with the facts that you've presented in front of us.
I really don't know what to say. That's the truth.
Is that all you're submitting?
That's, again, just for my own sake and for the sake of everybody else here, I'm representing myself. I have got no clue what I can and can't say. So just because of that, all I can say is I have submitted the evidence that I have.
Right. And then is it Miss Simpson or Miss Loudon that's summing up on behalf of the licensee?
I'll let Lynn go first, convener. If you would grant me 5 minutes at the end, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Carolina and convener. I was simply just going to say that obviously I've taken you through our submissions, and the crux of it is that looking purely at the information that Miss Samuels has submitted, there is no evidence. There is no evidence to suggest or prove that there are any grounds for review.
Miss Loudon, if you'd like to sum up as well.
I think I probably will stick to the same thing. I think in terms of what you are able to do, there has to be a breach of the licence. And there has not been a breach of the licence in this case, not in relation to conditions or anything else that's attached to the licence itself, and neither the licensing objectives. And I think it's a fairly invidious position that you find yourselves in this afternoon, because there isn't a police report supporting these allegations against my client. There's not an LSO report saying similar things. Reviews are generally brought by your reporting agents, and thereby you get evidential backing for that. And here we have a third party coming in with no evidential backing at all, and essentially 4 complaints. And that is not enough to take action, I would say, and put forward against this licence. This hearing has cost a great deal to Anne McGee. She is hanging on in that premises. You know, she's been incredibly emotional this week as we've been preparing for this hearing. It's been stress, it's cost. As you know, this hearing has been postponed because her nephew was killed 2 days before the previous one. We had to discharge it. So I just ask you to consider the use of this community facility, the fact that it runs live bands and it does so successfully. And you have one person coming to say that the noise disturbs her, and that's all that this is. And when this first came in, I looked at taking the expenses against her for doing it. But I'll come away from that. But this has to be looked at in a legal way, not an emotional one. And that is that there is no breach of the premises licence, nor the licensing objectives. And there is no evidence put before your honours today that you can hang something on in terms of taking action against this premises licence. So probably an emotional plea for me to say, please, could this just be put to bed now and take no action here? Not even a written warning. There's nothing to do. My submission.
Right. I think that's everybody had their sort of say, and I've looked through the notes Caroline sort of said earlier on, and everybody's got to that stage where we're into now discussing the application for review. Now, I must admit, I was the person who was asked to look at the original letter to see if it was frivolous or vexatious. I didn't think that it was frivolous or vexatious, because one person, you know, who may find noise annoying compared to another, I am willing to accept that. So that's why it's here. Based on the facts that we have today, if you read the letter, there was environmental health had came in, etc. But that wasn't part of this complaint. That was previous. And if you read the letter, you can't always pick that up. I would be of the opinion that based on the evidence we've had, and it's came forward today, there is no case for a review in this instance. However, if there was further evidence to come forward, and that would be up to the authorities to bring it if it continues, that the complainant keeps complaining, then that may be different. But currently, I don't see any reason to continue to look at this case. I think the evidence says that it doesn't exist. because the recordings, etc., haven't came since the current applicant for review has come forward. So I would be moving that we take no further action at this stage. Councillor Campbell, and then I'll bring in Caroline.
Do you want to bring Caroline in first, or Caroline, you happy for me? Go ahead.
Thanks, Councillor. If you don't mind, I'll just interject at the moment. So you're fully aware, members, that in the first instance you must ascertain whether a ground for review is established. It's a two-stage process here. Is a ground for review established? If a ground for review is established, you may make an order. You need not necessarily make an order. So in terms, convener, just in saying you're taking no further action, your first step is to establish, is a ground for review established? If there's no ground for review established, as in having regard to the licensing objectives, is the licence holder not a fit and proper person, or one or more of the conditions of the licence has been breached, or any other ground relevant to one or more of the licensing objectives. If no ground of review is established, then matters end there. So the first step is to ascertain whether a ground for review is established, and of course just reiterating the cruciality of that evidence-based approach, and you would have to give reasons. You must have an evidence-based approach here. What evidence is there to support that there is a ground for reviews established? That's your first step here. Thank you, convener. Thank you, members.
So just to clarify then, if that's the approach we need to go to, I would say there has been no evidence put in front of us today that would suggest that we have grounds for review. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, convener. That's exactly where I was going to go. Although there is evidence, but it's kind of flimsy in my view. But thanks.
Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, convener. I think based on the evidence submitted today, there are no grounds for review. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you very much. I feel for the complainant, because I think that she's probably at a disadvantage because people representing the manager are highly skilled and qualified and have a lot more knowledge. However, I can't see any grounds to continue, so I would agree with the rest of the councillors and just hope that a working relationship can continue with the manager and the local neighbours.
Councillor Beretti, have you anything you wish to add?
I would probably not deviate from what has already been said. Grounds for review would have to be recordings that were accurate, and as no recordings have ever been done of the sound, I simply cannot see how I can make a decision other than the conclusion that you came up with, Chair.
Right, Caroline, I think that's a unanimous decision, if you'd like to sum up for us.
Thank you, convener. Can you just clarify to me what your decision is? Are you minded in the first instance that a ground for review is established or not?
No ground has been established.
Okay, so just for clarity, no ground for review is established. The members are unanimous in relation to that decision that no ground for review is established, convener. Okay, so I'll just thank you. So Ms Loudon, Ms Simpson, Ms Samuels, you've heard from the board, and based on the information before them today, they've determined that no ground for review has been established. Therefore, proceedings can end there. Thank you. You will be notified of that decision as well. Thank you in writing.
We are obliged to you all this afternoon. Thank you.
I have no further business, so can I thank you all for your attendance?
Convener, can I just have a 5-minute word with you just when everybody goes offline, if I may? Thank you.
Right.